Well, welcome to Council Preview. I have Steve Barg, City Administrator. I'm Tom Loucks, Communications Director. Thanks for joining me. Thanks, Steve.
Good to be here.
All right, well, we're going to talk about the April 27th Common Council meeting. But first, we're taping this on a Wednesday. That's the 21st of April right now. And we had an organizational meeting last night. So, Steve, let's get up to speed on what that means and where we're at.
Yeah, I think, Tom, a lot of people hear the phrase organizational meeting and they think, what does that mean? I mean, you're already an organization. What, do you have to reconfigure yourself? Well, we do every time we have an election. And quite frankly, in our city, the way things are set up, we have an election every year because 5 of the council members are up, for re-election 1 year and the other 5 the next year. So we did have elections for districts 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, the even numbers. 4 of the 5 members were re-elected, and that was Nick Paschal in District 2, Rebecca Spiros in District 8, Tom Witzel in District 6, and Pete Hendler in District 10. We do have a replacement. We have Brian Barshow, who's a new member on the council from District 4, replacing Ken Bargander. So they all had to take the oath of office. And you say, well, wait a minute, how often do these folks have to take the oath of office? Pete Hendler has probably taken it 10 times. But every time you win, you have to take the oath of office for your new term. So a lot of the other housekeeping stuff was really appointments. First of all, the council members were appointed to be on committees, and they voted to approve those. So those are done. So the council members who sit on Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee, Board of Public Works, those kind of things have been assigned. But the other ones where Tom Witzel, the council president, made appointments of citizens to various committees, boards, and commissions, the council gets to take a week, Tom, and think about those and look at them and determine whether or not they think that those are acceptable. We're not to be overly critiquing of the public, but you want to know what these people bring to the table and make sure that you feel good about it. These people are supposed to be residents for the most part, although, as Tom Witzel mentioned with an appointment last night to the Economic Development Board, the council may approve an appointment for somebody who's not a city resident if that person brings qualifications and skills to the table that would be beneficial to the city. So he made those appointments. I think there were 22 of them, and we'll see what council wants to do at their next meeting. And then they also voted for the chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and finally the big one, the council president. And that takes on new meaning right now since we don't have a mayor. And guess what it came down to? A coin flip. Who would ever dream flipping a coin? Tom Butke and Nick Paschal were nominated for council president. Good honors. 2 great gentlemen. Like working with both of them. And they voted. It was 5-5. So then Tom Witzel said, well, let's vote again and see what it turns out to be. And you say, well, why would you vote again if it was already 5-5? But some people might say, well, I could have gone either way. Maybe I'll flip and we'll settle this. Whatever happened, it turned out 5-5 again. So we actually had a coin flip, and Nick called heads, and heads it was. So Nick Paschal from District 2 will now be our new council president going forward.
Well, that's how it works, a coin flip. I believe that would be the same way if there was a tie in elections, if I'm right. A coin flip if it was tied for alderman.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's happened here, but
I don't think it has, but Steve Okonek, who is on many of our committees, he was there after the meeting and we talked a little bit, and he said that there was I think a town supervisory race, maybe in Clark County, that came down to that very issue. They tied and they flipped a coin to see who would be the new town supervisor. People think that their vote doesn't count sometimes, and of course the council is a limited number of people, but even in the broader government, your vote counts.
It does. And I have had a chance to go through that in Wisconsin Rapids. It was a tie in an alderman position. So you're right. Vote does count. Excuse me. So you did touch base again on item Y on this agenda at the bottom about appointments. Is there anything else? This is presented then by Nick Paschal, the board president at this time. Then.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because you had Tom Witzel made the appointments, and now Nick will be the council president when they're considered, but he'll just follow through with the appointments that Tom made, and we'll see if the council as a whole is accepting of Tom's appointments. I might say one other thing that you and I have talked about, Tom. We want to get some additional advertising during the year, maybe twice a year, and let people at home know some of these committees, what they do, why they're important, and how you can get involved. And solicit applications, because when we get to April, and you've got a mayor or a council president trying to find people to fill these vacancies, you want to be able to go to emails and letters and resumes you've gotten and be able to find people who want to serve. So I'll say this even right now, if you're watching and you're interested in some of the things we do here, let us know. We'd love to get you involved in one of our committees or boards.
Most definitely, Steve. And for the public, we'll definitely look towards letting you know how to go about that in a program later on.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, let's go through this agenda. You have quite a bit. Again, the agenda is preliminary. You're still working on it, but generally we talk about things that are definitely going to happen. Let's talk about definitely there's going to Vandeweghe Waters. Justin always does a presentation once a month.
Yeah, he does, and he's trying to remind us that the work is going forward and are we on track. It does sound like we're on track, roughly for around the 1st of July. And ideally you'd probably want to be open a little bit earlier than that, but there's a lot of details they're still working through. Again, I want to applaud the council and the mayor last year on giving us the go-ahead to start that project earlier rather than later by not opening HEFCO in 2020. But won't it be exciting? Think about COVID-19 for a minute, Tom. Think about what we've been through for the last 13 or 14 months. And all of a sudden we get to the summer and we're going to have a brand new amenity opening that people are going to love. I mean, you look at the water slides and all the rest out there. It's going to be so much fun for people and their families. It'll be something to celebrate.
Let's hope we have a hot summer this year.
Yeah. But this is one of the great things about the updates that Justin gives us, because sometimes we have some dicey issues and we talk about them. And we've had a lot going on in the past 6 months. It's nice to have him give that monthly report and say, hey, look, progress is still on track. The construction is coming together. Look forward to a great aquatic center.
All right. Well, I don't want to miss a public hearing. That's important. Citizens can come out and talk about this project during a public hearing. Can you just touch base on I believe there's 5 projects that are going to be mentioned?
Yeah, and these are projects that I believe have happened, and you especially assess people for them, for the parts that they're responsible for. And I think we talk about special assessments from time to time, Tom. What happens is, when we redo a street, a lot of the cost, most of the cost is borne by the city. But there's some parts that are borne by the abutting property owners on either side. There might be driveway improvements to your entrance. There might be some, storm sewer or sidewalk. And you do pick up a little bit of the cost of the actual pavement. Pretty small in comparison to the total project cost. But we've sent letters to people. We've worked with them. We've said, look, you can expect it to be $2,000. And, that might be on the high side. We hope that it is. And then when we get final numbers on the project, you might find out that your assessment is $1,800, for your part of the project. But this is your chance to come to a public hearing and express concerns. If you have thoughts that you're being overcharged, if you have questions about how the charges were determined. Of course, we always encourage people to call Tom Turchie or a member of his staff at City Hall to ask those questions. But we would love you to be coming to the podium here that night if you want to talk more broadly about some of your concerns about those special assessments.
Yeah, it's really important, and I know Tom is going to have some plans for some upcoming meetings in regards to new projects coming up. So you can get on board before the end, at the beginning. So we'll be letting everybody know when those are going to take place. Yeah,
and I got to tell you, we get a pretty good deal here in Marshfield. I mean, I know people in other cities, you probably do too. I've worked in other cities where the residents paid a greater portion of street improvements. And, these are costly projects, so I get that. But we've tried to make it as fair and reasonable as we can. Yes, you might get a bill for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 or whatever, but if you look at the total cost of what was done to improve your street and maybe the sewer and water mains, whatever it is, we think it's a pretty good deal.
All right. I'll just note that there will be a public hearing right after the Pledge of Allegiance at this point. Yep. All right. I do want to touch base on consent agenda. There's quite a few items in there. Those are from a lot of our committee meetings that are not pulled out here that we'll talk about later. One is this book you have. Do you want to talk about, I believe it's Approve a State Hazmat Contract? Is that what it is?
It's the Wood County Hazardous Mitigation Plan. I'll hold it up. It's a 3-ring binder. It's very thick, very full. What this is about is Wood County has developed an emergency management plan for hazard mitigation. And you look at the kind of hazards we could have here. And a lot of them, we know floods, tornadoes, those kind of things. If you read the book, you also see things that you think, really, in central Wisconsin? Earthquakes, dust storms. Dust storms, you think of Kansas, and earthquakes, you think of other parts of the country. But anything that could happen, and what's our plan for addressing them? And of course, Wood County is a big county. Rapids is the county seat, and they're 35 miles from here. So planning for the entire county how to handle some of these emergencies is a big endeavor. They want the various municipalities in the county to sign on. And so we've been looking at it. Our staff has found a few little tweaks of things that maybe need to be adjusted in terms of the references to Marshfield and what they say. And I'm trying to wrap these up. I'm hopeful to get this done so that this can be on the agenda for Tuesday night, Tom. But why it's really important, two reasons. One, it's important to have a plan, for the county-wide. That's critical. But two, in order for the city to be eligible for some grant funding when we have disasters, we need to be a member of this. We need to be signed on to this plan. So we want to make sure that we adjust anything that needs to be modified and get the county's blessing. But then we want to be fully on board with them for both reasons, for protection from what happens in bad times and for being able to get some funding to help deal with it.
Well, we've been lucky here in Marshfield. We haven't had any emergencies, at least in my time here in the last couple of years. I would believe Rapids in the storm of 2019 may have used something similar to this. Yeah. That was a pretty big deal within the city and around the county, which is, again, Wood County. Most of our area here in the city is Wood County, so that's what that piece is. Is there something similar to Marathon? Because we've got a little chunk of us.
I would guess so. I haven't seen that, but I would guess they probably have done the same thing. Okay. And in Marshfield, we don't have a water feature right now, so we don't have a lake or a river that overflows. But we've had some pretty good flooding, I understand. The year that I applied for this job and interviewed for it back in 2010, there was a terrible incident. In fact, I was actually here, doing an interview, and I stayed overnight in town, and there was like 5 inches of rain in a very short period of time, I think, and there were some flooding problems, believe it or not. So it can happen here as well as anywhere else.
Yep, and this helps with any not creating the disaster, trust me that.
Right.
But it's about funding down the road.
Funding and preparing.
Yeah, preparing.
Both things, so that you're ready for natural disasters and the things that can happen.
All right. Well, we'll see what they do on that. It just might go through, but just wanted to let the people know through the consent agenda. Yep. Can we move off of consent? Anything else? We'll go into the utility, value of a utility. Our general manager, Nick does this on a yearly basis. What is that about?
Well, Marshfield Utilities does a lot of good stuff for the community, and every year they take time to talk about some of the things they've done, what their focus is, what their accomplishments are. And, you might say, well, wait a minute, they're part of us, right? They are part of us. They're under our umbrella overall. But a lot of things that they do really fly under the radar. You think of them when you get your bill and you pay your electric and water costs. But they're involved in economic development. They're involved in some community planning projects. They're more than just the electric and water provider. They're a community player. And this gives them a chance to showcase some of their projects. I assume this year they'll talk about the work being done on the new building that'll come online later in 2022. And just to get caught up about what they've done in the past 12 months.
Yeah, it's important to learn, and anybody that's even living out of the city can learn stuff if they want to watch our council meeting. Marshfield Utilities is not just in the city of Marshfield. It does serve communities outside the city.
It does. It does. And one of the things that they provide, a lot of people probably don't know, Tom, is a dividend for economic development. So they provide about $225,000, somewhere around there, give or take, dollars every year that ends up in the lap of the Economic Development Board that allows us to do projects. They've been involved in the Wenzel Family Plaza. They've been involved in any number of community activities that further the growth of our city. And I don't think people know that until they hear it.
Right. Let's talk about tax incremental districts. We have a new district we're working on, TID 12, right?
Yep.
Let's talk about that and how it works with now TID 7 that has been here for a while.
Okay, good question, Tom. People hear these. First of all, they think, what's a tax incremental district? It's an area that we set up for future growth and development. A lot of times it's a vacant area that you put in streets, sewer, water, and then you try to attract businesses. And then when they build and they pay taxes, you can use that to offset your debt. Well, what we had is TID District number 7. We still have it, and that's the Yellowstone Industrial Park. But we're at a point in that district, Tom, where we can no longer spend money on projects there and recover through taxes. So what we're looking at doing is carving off several parcels of land from that district, because we can't offer incentives to developers, we can't pick up project costs, and putting it in along with some other land that we are buying from the UW extension and creating TIF District number 12. So that will allow us with a new TIF district to be able to spend money on infrastructure costs, possibly even rail, and developer incentives to help businesses come here if they need some, who knows what they might need. They might need fiber, they might need whatever, or they might need some direct grant assistance to make it work. And this gives us the financial tools to be able to keep growing industrially. And truthfully, we've heard from Karen Olson, the business development director at Mackey, that periodically companies will call on us, say, hey, look, you got 20 acres available and you got some incentives, we'd love to come here from Madison. And we're like, well, no, we don't really have anything right now. You can't say that and be competitive. So we want to have the land and the incentives to keep growing our industrial tax base.
That is very important, and it's how our city will grow. Josh Miller, the Development Services Department, is part of this process. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's been kind of at the heart of it, and Ron Altman, our finance director, has been part of it too, working with our financial advisor on putting this together. You have to show how it'll pay off. You can't just say, well, we'll spend $10 million on street, sewer, water, rail, and all this stuff. We're going to get our money back? Not a clue. Mm-hmm. No, you have to be able to show what kinds of companies you might be able to attract, what types of tax payments you might get. Will it take 10 years to recover your investment, 20 years? There's a lot of financial projections in here. But Josh Miller, who's outstanding Development Services Director, really is at the heart of it.
I want to talk a little bit about this tax incremental district just to help me, maybe our viewers that are watching. Does this mean that if someone doesn't move in, we do all this work, who takes the bill? Is it the city? And then if you want to incentivize, how far can a city go? Can they give the land for free, or is there some kind of rules? I'm always kind of curious. If you can answer that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I can. And really, as far as the financial part, if we spend some money on projects and we're not recouping, we're not seeing new development, really the general fund might be subsidizing that TIF district for a while. But as tax payments come in, the TIF district then repays the general fund for that advance. Picture it as an advance from person A to person B. The other thing we're doing a lot of lately, Tom, is we're doing pay-as-you-go TIF. We used to say, well, just build it and they will come. Take a big 100 acres and put street, sewer, water across it, and then let's just wait to see what happens. Well, you don't do that so much anymore because you're bearing a lot of debt before you know if you have any success. So now it's kind of like maybe you put in street over a portion of it, and then when that starts building, then you extend the street farther to try and make sure that you're not getting ahead of yourself. The other question was, I've already forgotten. I'm sorry.
Well, no worries. What can you incentivize? Can you give Can you give the land for free, or is there a law?
We oftentimes, in our current industrial park and our business park, do ultimately give the land for free. What we do is we sell it to them, but if they build what they tell us they're going to build, something that will we'll get our money back in taxes and more, usually is the case, then we agree to refund the purchase price later on. And we do give incentives. We do give actual cash incentives, and that might sound weird to people. You give people money to come here? We do. I mean, if you can get an employer to come here and put up a $3 million building and hire 40 people that pay $20 an hour or whatever it is, there's a benefit to your community, and you're willing to say, okay, what are your needs? Well, boy, we sure could use some assistance toward getting this building up, or whatever, the parking lot, some of the things we need to do to make this facility work. And we see if it's TIF eligible, of course. But we have incentives to provide to get them to locate here. And it's very competitive between all the communities around us.
We have space now, though, right?
We do. Okay. We do have space now. But the space that we have in TIF District 7 that we're carving off, again, we can't offer incentive because that district hasn't expired, but the expenditure period has expired. So we want to get it in a new district where monies can be spent and recouped.
All right. Well, that gives some information about how that works, and maybe someday we can get Josh to talk about it a little bit more, and Karen Olson over at Mackey. So I just find it interesting, and I would think entrepreneurs that may want a new building be interested in doing that.
That'd be a great idea.
All right, let's move on here. Shared revenue, that's kind of a scary term, but it's really important because we don't just survive on taxes, we need state aid.
Yeah, a lot of the money that we get for our annual budget comes from state aid. Shared revenue is the broad category, it's kind of a general category. We also get transportation aid to keep up our roads, connecting highway aid, computer aid, these kind of things. But the big one really is shared revenue. And what the state is saying here, what the League of Wisconsin Municipalities is saying here, Tom, is they've been tracking this for a while. And every year there's inflation. So let's say, the price of goods and services, bread and milk and all that goes up by 2%. And the state really hasn't been increasing our payment very much. So you wake up one day and you say, okay, well, wait a minute. In the last 10 years, inflation has been a total of 15%. And the state aid to cities has gone up by 3% or whatever. I'm making this up. But we've really not kept up. And cities are saying, okay, enough already. Enough. We're going to count on you to be a partner. If you say you're a partner in local government, we need you to keep up more with the costs that we need to operate our cities and villages. So they're looking for every community in the state to do a resolution, send it off to Madison, signed by our local officials, passed by our council, saying, look, get on this. It's important. If you want communities in Wisconsin to do well, which you say you do, you say that a lot, give us the tools, give us the financial assistance to keep up with the rising costs.
Well, we really don't have a lot of time because the state budget, we want it for 2022 and 2023.
True.
That's going to be, it's being worked on right now. It's already presented to both sides. The governor already has a budget. I would assume it's in there, but then it's got to work out between the Republican and Democratic parties and come with but that's where this resolution would go to. You would first go to, and it would be sent back to the state for consideration, or maybe it is already considered, but make sure it's important that it is going to be funded in the state budget.
Oh, right, Tom. And even though the budget process is well underway in Madison, it oftentimes comes down to the Joint Finance Committee, and those folks end up oftentimes in June or whenever making those final cuts and changes. So there's still time to let people know that we really we respect what the state does. We respect that they have financial concerns too, but we continue to drift, and they need to know that we need to keep up on the monies that we need from them to provide services.
All righty. Well, we have an ethics board. They've met, I think, at least once, maybe twice.
Twice.
You have something else on here, but they're not going to meet on here, but it's about funding for training.
Yeah, when the ordinance was put in place last fall, Tom, it was made very clear that if they need money for training, training, workshops, whatever it is, they need to get it through the council. They don't have a budget, so they need to approach the council. So Jen Rakey, our Human Resources Director, brought it to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee the other night. They were supportive. Now we're going to bring it to the council as a separate agenda item, saying, can we have $500 to get a qualified training person to come in from a legal firm and talk about some of these issues. How do you hold a hearing on an ethical concern? What considerations do you need in making decisions as to whether ethical violations have occurred? And we have some good members on this board, but they're probably all over the map in terms of their level of experience in education. So this will be good training that they need. But again, when you have a professional come in, it's not free, and hopefully the council will be supportive of the funds. I think the council's been very supportive of getting this board off to a good start, and this would seem to be part of that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll find out. We're only looking for $500. Not a lot of money.
No, and there may be requests for more, right. and maybe they'll be asking, where does this lead? Do you see more trainings coming? Do you see more, workshops? Well, we don't know for sure, but we want them to have the tools they need to do their jobs.
Most definitely. Let's talk about lifting the mask requirement for city buildings and facilities. This is just city buildings, let me note that. So
periodically I have people ask me, and you probably have people ask you, is there a mandate for the whole city? There never was. Dane County had one, some other places did, but we never had a citywide one. But we have required masks in city buildings and facilities for the most part. So at the last council meeting, Tom, I presented the idea that, what do you want to do about that? The state Supreme Court has now struck down the governor's mandate as of March 31st. So it's kind of everybody's fending for themselves, every business, church, organization, government. And I brought two pieces of information to them. Number one, Rapids, Wausau, and Point have all told me very directly, not only are they not lifting it, but they're not even talking about it. They see indefinitely that the pandemic continues, and they don't see an end immediately to taking off that expectation of employees and visitors. Well, then I went on to my city administrators network across the state, and there are quite a few communities saying, you know what, when we get to a point where people have had a chance to get vaccines, let's say it's 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever, there's got to be a point where we say anybody who wants a vaccine should have gotten one. Let's go back to having no masks. So I presented both ideas. You probably heard the discussion. It was all over the place. Ever since the beginning of the pandemic, there have been some council members over here, some council members over here. And so what I'm probably going to do, although I've gotten a lot of good feedback from employees, and I'm still going over, I was asked to get feedback, and I think I got 30 emails from employees, everybody seems to, for the most part, think we need to wind this down at some point. The question is how to do that responsibly, and I will come forward this time with an actual proposal. I don't have it in mind right now, but it will likely be based upon what some communities are doing across Wisconsin, which is to pick a point and say, by this date, anybody who wants a vaccination probably should have been able to secure one.
Okay. Well, I'm sure if somebody does want to wear a mask, there's going to be no problem with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's still people who will want to wear a mask even if they're not required to, and we totally respect and appreciate that.
And that'll be employees as well as citizens that come.
Yep.
So, well, we'll hear from you and what the council's discretion is on that, and
Sounds good.
and then we will get information out from that point once there's been a decision made, so people are aware of it. So, we don't have a lot of time left. I know David's giving me the time, but we have two big important things we do need to cover. Is the vacancy of a mayor. That's huge.
It is, and they talked about it informationally last week. The reason they didn't act on it was because they were waiting for Brian Barshow, the new council member, to take his position. But again, real briefly, the four choices before them, three that we talked about before, and a new one the council added. One is a special election, which would likely happen in July, and it would cost some money, all on the city's dime, maybe as much as $15,000. Another would be for the council to solicit applications from the public, have people come before the council, come to the podium, make their case, and then the council picks somebody. The third one is just to let the council president, who's now Nick Paschal, be the one to kind of be like the acting mayor, maybe not called the acting mayor, but to run the meetings and sign the official documents, those types of things. And then the fourth one they threw in there is something that some cities across Wisconsin have, Tom, called the council manager form of government, where my position is elevated from an administrator to a manager. I know some people think, isn't that the same thing? It's really not. Managers have more authority than administrators. They can spend more money without council approval. They can hire and fire department head level positions, without council blessing. Those types of things. I haven't looked into it entirely, but there's a greater level of authorization to managers. So I'm going to look into that a little bit and present that on Tuesday night. I suspect if they're interested in that, that's more of a long-term search, but we'll see what they want to do, and I am looking for them to make a decision on the 27th. I'll be pretty clear about that. We need to have some direction and move on.
Right. Just to clarify, no matter what, if they down the road went with the city manager, you always have a mayor, no matter what.
Yeah, Oshkosh is a good example. I mean, they have a mayor. They call themselves a council manager form of government. I'm not sure how the mayor is selected, honestly, but yeah, they still have somebody running the meetings and call the mayor. But for some reason, that model has always been called council manager. And I guess maybe because it becomes more of a direct relationship, I don't know.
All right, well, we'll hear from you. You got a lot of work to do yet.
I do.
We got one more thing I do want to bring up. City Attorney Harold Wolfgram received two complaints for the two fire police commission members, Andy Kehoe and
Randy
Gershom. It's in here in open session. What can you tell us about it?
I kind of wonder why it's in open session, right? Because we usually talk about these in closed. The two complaints were received back in early April. What happened was it went to closed session of the council last time on April 13th, but at that time the documents weren't in the legal form. There's some stuff that the complainant would have to do in terms of a verification sheet and stuff like that, and I know that they've been advised of that. So anyway, when the city attorney comes forward, if we still don't have it in that form, he's going to tell them what that means, what they could or should do with it in that case. If it's in the proper form, he may just advise them he's reviewed it, and they should go back to closed session to discuss this. Now, I will tell you that in the appointments made last night by Tom Witzel, the council president then, subject to council approval, Randy's being replaced by Bill Panker in his spot. So the request by the petitioner, if you will, Tom, was for removal of both of those officials from their jobs as police and fire members, and that would presumably take care of one of them. But we'll see what the city attorney comes up with. The complaint has a lot of attachments. It has a lot of documentation with it. He's reviewing it to determine if it's in the appropriate form. The council will not be allowed that night to talk about it. You won't see them saying, well, no, wait a minute. What did Andy do? Let's talk about that in open session. That's not going to happen.
Okay, well, once again, there is a whole alphabet of agenda items. I say alphabet because of the way you letter the agendas.
And we didn't cover, anywhere near all of it. It's a busy meeting.
Yeah, it is. And surprisingly, every 2 weeks, the city of Marshall is able to have quite a bit on their agenda. Some cities, municipalities only do it once a month, but I definitely see that there's that need here in our form of government. I think that's why. A little bit different than different kinds of forms of government. So anything else, Steve, before we sign off?
No, I think it's interesting now we have a new council member, and I realize that's only 1 out of 10, but I think, it's a new group. They've got some challenges, and I look forward to working with them.
All right, well, we'll sign off here. Another council preview program in the books, and we will return in May already, believe
Yep.
it.
Wow.
Hopefully we have green on the trees right now. I know it's snowing out here yet in later April. As you walked over, I noticed
Yeah,
that.
I know. I always say that spring is my favorite time of the year, but sometimes spring is kind of weird.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks again, Steve, for coming, and I thank you guys for watching us, our council preview program. I'm Tom Loucks, Director of Communications here for the City of Marshfield.